going to be an interesting conversation. You know, I've known each for a long time, and you know, if we recorded this in like one of those, we just got into some random town somewhere in a hotel, it's midnight, and we got to put a deck together for our meeting. Those would be fun. But you know, you've done some things that like transcended how we started our relationship that like I'm learning from you in. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. It's great to be on your show, and I'm honored to be one of the first guests.
We talk about this like it's the dreamers, right? The people who are out there doing stuff in the heat of it. And I don't know, you can learn a lot from looking back at somebody who's now successful. But when you're in the middle of it, there's something about that, you know, like the athletes who are like in the heat of it. I have high school athletes. They don't really want the person who was great 20 years ago.
Yeah, and it's that is the thing that's helped me the most has been talking to musicians that are learning today how to be better musicians. Because I'm not a musician. I try my best. But the most compelling conversations that help me push the business forward and become, you know, everybody says, be the Apple of your business. And I'm like, of course, I would love to be the Apple. But what I can take from Apple is that I can know my audience better than anybody on the planet because I genuinely care to know how I can improve their lives.
Yeah. Well, what I really like is it's the scrappiness, it's the innovation. You know, there's this balance in there. Like you know, there's the fake it till you make it. That's not right. It's like, well, there's some of that, and I know that we don't all see ourselves the way that others see us. And when you and I talk, like the real talk, you question a lot of things, and I'm like, not like. No, you see, nobody else sees that. Like we see this person who's like got a bunch of drive and a bunch of courage and all that, and you're sitting there going, man, I don't know, man.
I'm scared.
It's real.
I'm scared all the time. Scared that I'm not going to succeed. That I'm going to. It's not the fear of failure. It's the fear that I'm not going to succeed, which is different than failing. I'm not afraid to fail. I'm afraid to not succeed in what I'm trying to do because it's way bigger than myself. It feels very important to me.
I also remember a conversation of when you were in a pretty comfortable place, corporate world, because you know when you're good at what you do, you get paid well for it, and so you get paid more and more because you know it's going to take more and more to steal your dream. Right?
Totally, money was great. Money was awesome.
Your fear was like, I'm afraid that they're going to buy me off. I'm afraid I'm not going to make the leap.
Yeah, and it's very tempting and very easy to stay where you are, especially when more money comes your way, I'd say more opportunity, more challenges, but they're all kind of in the same wheelhouse, and you're just going to get better at what you're doing at that time, which is fine. But the moment I needed to take the leap, I knew right then and there, like, I have to do this. I cannot even concentrate on what I'm doing without taking this leap.
Yeah, well, you know, I like go with the colloquialisms from growing up. You know, that's my grandfather would say, the problem is you're going to go different barn, same rats.
Different barn, same rats.
Yeah,
that's the grass is never greener.
I don't mean the people. I mean the things that kind of erode.
Yeah, the problems.
Yeah. And you know, my favorite Rush quote: "If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice."
Yeah, doing nothing is doing something.
But outside in observation,
I'm dumbing down all of these quotes.
Yeah, I mean, like, this outside observation is you seem to be as concerned about not taking the chance. The Warren Buffett thing about most of my errors were errors of omission.
Yeah.
That's rare. I mean, what is that about you that says, I have to take the shot, I have to go, even if I fail, because that's a very vulnerable place to be in.
It is. Well, I have a great support system that allows me to make these decisions. That's really the fundamental. But the need to do something that I find compelling and important in my own life outweighs the security and safety of what I already know. And I already know how to do that thing. So in the event I need a plan B, I have a plan B already. It's rely on the skills I've developed over 20 years.
Yeah.
But to answer your question really directly, I couldn't go to bed and wake up every day knowing that I had something really special to do with my life and not do it. Yep. It's just not okay with me. And I think it's because, you know, this is a little bit morbid, but my family has dealt with early premature deaths in more than 3 instances. And I'm like, holy shit, 52 is young.
Thank you.
27 is real young. 62 feels pretty young. These are early premature deaths that rattled me to the core. And I'm like, I'm not going out without trying. I would much rather make an effort and give it my all than to just think about it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know why that is. If it's because of deaths, if it's because I'm afraid of regretting not trying something, but it's that combination of like my will, ambition, anxiety to be successful at something I built and overcome any imposter syndrome or lightning in a bottle thing. I really feel like a lot of my career was lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Like, I know I worked hard. I know I did things well, but I also was part of something extremely special and rare and unique. And so I think those things that happened, you know, and the insecurity of like, I'm just riding the coattails of really smart people.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I can't live that way.
Yeah, you know, I think one of my observations too is because of the idea of like mortality is like an extreme motivator for some people, but also like I've never seen you get like all concerned about the details. You know, you're like, here's an obstacle, here's a thing, like whatever. And everybody was in the corporate world, they're over here complaining about, and you're like, I don't know, like whatever. Because it was one of the last things my father told me before he passed was the days are long, years are short.
Yeah. Yeah, the days are long. And the years are definitely short. And I see that now more than ever. I'm coming up on my 13-year anniversary with my wife. My daughter just turned 8 years old. The days have been very long, you know, but I look back, I'm like well over a decade married to my wife, you know, almost a decade with my daughter. And mortality to me, you know, I don't take life for granted. And I did for a very long portion of my life. Like up until I was probably 25, I just took everything for granted, maybe even longer than that. And then I started to experience really significant pain and emotion that has never left. And I really relish it because it enables me to think differently, to do things differently and take risks. But I'll tell you, it's lonely and it's scary. So I'm glad to have people that are mentors in my life like you. You've been a great mentor to me for, you know, we met in 2009, I think, or 2008 and became, you know, friends, coworkers, and then you enabled me to do what I do best. And now to this day, when I'm building my company, Elmore Pedal Company, I call you often for advice or walk me off the ledge or, you know, and kind of give me this, you know, perspective. And I've got a few people in my life that are there for me. And those, without those people, it's really hard to do this.
Well, I think it's a symbiotic relationship too. You know, people talk about, you know, mentors and I think because we're in a society where there's someone here and someone here. I don't see it that way. Like, you helped give me the nudge for what you know I should have done for a long time. You're like, do it, man. Like, and it was because you reinforced in me the things you have in you. And I would say, like you said, I think only people who realize life is finite live. And one of the most valuable things is relationships. So that's one of the things I respect. I love our differences, and I like the fact that whatever capacity we've been in is kind of a partnership, and also like hold each other accountable, and I love it. So there's that is something that is rich, and I appreciate it. So thanks for being on. This is going to be an interesting conversation, but I have a lot to learn from you, and also observations of things like mistakes made. And I think it's your perspective on making errors and how you deal with that is important. And not, you and I work together at LinkedIn, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but Reid Hoffman talked about the fact that if you aren't slightly embarrassed by your first product, by your first product, you ship too late.
Yep. And
we
can go take a look at my prototypes.
Elmore Pedal, and it was awesome. You're like, what about this? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then eventually, I not even the product, and I moved to Austin, Texas, like great music scene or whatever. And I'm like, what I saw was you were lit up, and that as an investor, that's what I bet on. I bet on that.
Amazing feeling, amazing feeling, because you bet on something. You bet on me, but with an idea that you maybe had no idea what it did, what the use case was. There was no precedent for it either. This product didn't exist. And, I appreciate that so much that you were willing to bet on me because you saw my passion. And that's really, I'm a high passion guy, right? So that's where my lack of attention to detail sometimes comes from. It's my passion to just push forward and focus on the few things that I know I can impact.
Well, I think it wasn't a blind bet. So I'd seen what you do before. And I think also, if someone has faced something and done it, and you see them succeed, over time get through it, they can do the same thing. And especially in today's world, when someone says, "Can you do this?" I never interpret that as have you done it.
That's interesting.
I can probably figure it out. And so I think that's awesome. And that perspective, I think, help a lot of people. And not everybody's cut out for me to scare everybody out of entrepreneurship today.
Yeah, I think you're doing a service by helping people either get in or get out. But I think and I'll leave it with this, but every problem has a solution. An engineer friend of mine who helped me build the Elmore Pedal told me that. I have no technical skills. Zero. I don't know how to do electrical engineering. I don't know hardware. I'm very beginner level at software. But what I was able to do was what you just described, was tell people my vision, get them together, align towards a shared goal, and make that happen. And that's exactly what I've done. So, and what I'm going to continue to do for the rest of my life is get people around me who believe in me, believe in what I'm trying to do, and believe in themselves to get that thing done. Yep. And that is that's also being an entrepreneur. So a lot of people think it's like, oh man, I'm going to go out, I'm going to build this business by myself. If you try to do it by yourself, you're going to fail. 100% you will fail. So it's about making sure that you have the right people in the room, that they understand why you're doing this, that they feel your passion, and that they can support what you're doing, whether that you pay them or not. Yep. In the beginning, I had no money to pay anybody. I still have no money to pay anybody, but in the beginning, I had no money to pay anybody, and so I networked like a crazy person to get prototype number 1 built, and that's what it's about. It's about the passion, the drive, the willingness to take risks, but it is absolutely frightening, and there are days where I'm like getting out of bed like, why did I leave that cushy corporate job? It happens all the time.
I think you and I share this of like, you respect people who are respectable. You trust people who are trustworthy. And it takes time. Like, trust is earned by consistency over time, lost in a moment, all that. But there's, I think it's Gallup has been doing a survey since like the early 70s on essentially, I don't know what it's called, but it's like respecting people in positions of authority. A couple of months ago, I was reading it, and I think every category is at its lowest point ever, not because of now, it's a trend. So it's religion, politics, education, medicine. Okay. Like all these arenas. Yeah. They have lost that, they've earned their loss of trust over time. Okay, I'm an optimist. I think that's good news.
Tell me why you think that's good news. I can sense why it's good news, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Okay, so when you and I enter the workforce, it's like you either buy into the system or you don't. I don't know that that's really the thing anymore, because I think either people don't actually totally buy in, but you don't have to like commit yourself to this. Do you believe everything a medical doctor says? In our parents' generation, yes.
Yeah, of course, right? They're the ultimate authority on health.
Yeah, or
public health.
People are like, I'm at this religion or that religion. And it's like, there's probably some, what do you call that, theology and something like, I don't know if I believe that specific thing. And I think back then it was like, well, then you're not one of us or whatever it is. I think that's decreasing. I don't know, when I look at the kids' generation.
I think you're probably right. And it's probably because there's more access to information, whether the information is accurate or inaccurate, there's just more information. And so you're able to kind of glom onto things that either, remind you of something in your history or provoke you to think about your future.
How do you glom, like at one point? Like, how do you make that choice?
I think you just, you physically hold on to something. Yeah, how do you glom on?
That must be a musical term. I don't understand.
I think glomming on is, in my world, is glomming on is when you start to push other people and other opinions away, and you hold your opinions really dear.
Yeah, there's this, in the 70s, there's this band, and they were kind of like that, but it was them versus Aerosmith. I think Dream On was more inspiring than Glom On. They won. Steven Tyler was like, got it.
Steven Tyler knew that Dream On was better than Glom On. He was an innovator. He's still, he's not innovating anymore.
So
let's put it that way.
You provide resources to the music industry. I got an idea for you.
Yeah.
Geriatrics. Like, you got a whole set of people right now that you just provide, accessibility tools for them to get on stage.
I would assume that's a market that I have not tapped into, but a lot of my customers actually, I wouldn't call them geriatric, but they're in their 60s. I think it's amazing. So I talk to a lot of my customers because I'm not a huge sports guy. I'm more of a, even though I worked in the sports industry as a producer in radio for 4 years, I was faking it the entire time. I could not care less. I'm like sitting next to these famous athletes, asking them for time for interviews, and I'm like, I just don't care.
But so what's interesting though is like that sort of irreverence, which I share in like most areas, probably helps you have a better like balanced point of view. You're not like a like a groupie?
I try not to be a groupie or a fanboy. For athletes, for sure, I'm not a groupie or a fanboy. And it's because I don't think I relate very much to athletes. I mean, like, I've played, organized sports, but I never really got super serious about it. Yeah. I can be a little bit of a fanboy in the music world, to be honest, because they're magicians to me. They're like wizards.
Yeah, so that's you said something that might be true. First time ever. No, in sports, a specific sport, it takes like high caliber world level, well, maybe not world level, respectable level athlete. You and I are probably like, it's unlikely I'm going to the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's possible. I think Spud Webb was short.
My parents guaranteed I would not be in the NBA. They're like, you are a pudgy Jew. You're not going to make it to the NBA.
My skills guaranteed I wouldn't be in the NBA. But so you either are, and like maybe you could find the sport, like curling, right? You could find the sport, yeah. but in reality, like in music, is that different? Like, will you think that a broader set of people could be musically, not musically like top of the world, but like musically competent relative to the number of people who could be like a decent tennis player or whatever? Yeah,
that's a good question. I think, that's a great question. I think there's levels, right? So there's levels to how competent you want to be, and that's a personal, goal, right? So if you're growing up and you want to become a professional musician and tour and have a big band, you're more likely to end up as a session player, someone who's recording with top names, and so I think it's the same thing. It's like you have a goal. Is your goal to be a world beater? Is your goal to be a proficient athlete, proficient musician? What's your goal, and how much drive do you have? Yeah. I think that usually determines how far someone will take that hobby, if they take it from hobby to professional.
So do you think it's like innate talent? Well, I mean, obviously there's some, but do you think to be at a level that's like play with your friends and they're like, that's really great?
Yeah.
Is that about passion? Is there like a specific skill that you think is required for musical competence?
No, I don't think there's a particular skill for musical competence. I think it is 100% desire and will.
That's really interesting too. I think I share that because I see people who make a choice to, like, there's a little bit of this, in the grade school playground, and you get chosen for teams in sports. There is the person who they're like, you get the maraca. That's kind of like me. Like, okay, fine. The gong at the end of it.
Yeah, here's your tambourine.
But yeah, I mean, and I would imagine too, there are people who like they have nimble fingers and they're going to be like an excellent, cellist or maybe violin or whatever.
Sure.
Guitar. And then there's people who maybe have like a sense of rhythm that's just impeccable, and so they may have percussion or skill. But like generally, there's probably a broad set of things you could potentially choose your.
I think the average musician, and I'm probably below average as a musician because I picked up the guitar late in life. I always wanted to play, but I picked it up very late in life when I was 33 years old. Right, and so
that's almost it. Like the end, right?
Yeah, pretty well. For learning things, it feels like the end. So I don't think I have any particular musical ability. I just have such a deep passion for music and musicians that I wanted to become as close to those people as possible. Just so that I can. It's a way of identifying. With a group of people. I get a lot of joy out of seeing live musicians, and now I'm able to understand a little bit more of the wizardry that I'm watching. So that helps me kind of connect to the musician. And you and I have talked about this before. Like, everybody's talked about the 10,000 hour rule. That fascinates me so much when it comes to musicians, because a lot of people don't understand this, but in particular,
I know what you're looking for. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah. In particular, the musicians that I think are the most interesting are the ones that I love all musicians, but the ones that can use the 4 basic chords, like an Ed Sheeran. Okay, I'm not a huge Ed Sheeran fan, but he can write game-changing songs that people love and fill stadiums with just very basic knowledge that I could teach you. You could learn these 4 chords in a month. Now, you'll have to get through the physical pain of building finger calluses and your thumb, like muscles in your thumb and your hand that you didn't know you necessarily had. So once we get you through that physical pain, you could play almost any Ed Sheeran song you've ever wanted to play or have heard. So there's that level of musician who rises to the very, very top because they appeal to so many. And then you've got the people that have just the most incredible technical skills that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an interesting dichotomy too.
What's interesting, like you described, it's almost like the development of mankind, like tools. You know, so you think about there's a certain thing that you're like really strong and lift a big heavy rock or not, and then people created leverage and they created wagons and those tools then allowed more and more people to do the thing.
Yeah.
So do you think that like say voice talent is more like natural talent? You could have to develop it, but an instrument gives you more leverage to like more of us could probably use that instrument to be decent and harder for voice or something?
That's a good call out. Yeah, I think an instrument does provide you with that leverage because no number of voice skills could get me to be a good singer. Now, I have a very good friend who is a professional opera singer, and he tells me, dude, you can sing. I'm like, no. I'm telling you, I can't sing. Even if I try to sing in my car when no one can hear me, it's horrible. Like, I don't have the map to follow the music, and I can't hear what I'm supposed to produce. And he said it's just a matter of training your brain and training your vocal cords. Yeah. So he believes, as a professional singer who sings with Andrea Bocelli, that anybody can learn how to sing. And I think, what your point is around like music and creating music or sounds that are enjoyable become more accessible through an instrument. Yeah.
You know, it's really interesting. I wonder, like, the popularity of instruments, is it like, like you mentioned with voice, like it's a unique person who can be Angus Young.
Yeah.
Right? You scream for 3 hours, like, every night of your life. That's weird. Or, like, voice talent is just, like, a lot of female vocalists are just, like, unbelievable, right?
Totally.
And, but probably more of us could say, okay, this instrument, if I learn to play the guitar, it's going to have the same sound as if you play it. Obviously, there's a bunch of differences, but, like, that mastery of the instrument, the projection of the sound, all of that, the quality of the sound. So my sister was played violin. She was like in orchestras all over the world.
Oh, okay.
And like the quality of that sound clearly as a player, but also there's a big difference between a Stradivarius and then when you get a Goodwill. Instrument quality does a lot.
Yes,
whereas like I guess in sports, in voice, and a lot of things, you're the instrument. Yeah.
I mean, you've got all the shoes are pretty much the same, right? I mean, I think about basketball. All the shoes are the same.
Yeah.
But the player in the shoes, that's the difference. And the coach behind the player and, the 10,000 hours that they put in or more. I love the Mamba mentality that Kobe brought to the world. I think that's the most amazing feat, to be able to work out double your competitors.
Marketers,
that's amazing.
I mean, there's, no offense marketers, but taking something and, so for example, you talk about shoes.
Yeah.
So we're in Chicago. And, Jordan's like, when I came out, I guess there was Chuck, Taylor's GTs way back, but
sure.
The general idea is you're probably not just a better athlete, you're probably like, you're cooler, you're better.
For sure.
Like, that's a wonderful marketing thing. It's not really true.
No.
It's perception of it.
Because everybody can have them.
Yeah.
Doesn't make me cool.
Yeah.
I'm just naturally cool.
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
But yeah, what I do think the shoes do, they connect the dots for you psychologically, maybe subconsciously. Like, if I wear these shoes, I'll end up on the court. Yeah. And I think the same thing happens with musicians. I've suffered deeply from gear acquisition syndrome, which is a term known to musicians.
Tell me about that. What is that?
They buy tools and different guitars and different amps and different guitar pedals to sound like their favorite musician. Right, and so they kind of think about how many different guitars do I need to sound like XYZ? What type of distortion pedal do I need to buy to sound like Jimi Hendrix? And you're not going to sound like Jimi Hendrix, no matter what you do, because Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan or you name the guitar player, they have their own style of play and their own tone, and those are the guitar players that to me, everybody remembers, because they're playing the same instrument. Yeah. They're all using the same tools. They're all using the same strings. They're using the same amps. They're on the same stage, but their fingers are different, and the way they compress the strings, and the way that they bend the strings, and the rhythm, and the artistry comes out through the instrument. And that's when you can hear someone and know, oh, that's Carlos Santana. Yeah. That's the Michael Jordan of musicians. It's not the gear is all there. But you could get like a Willie Nelson who has a guitar that, it's called Trigger. It's got holes in it. It's beat up. It's barely held together. Yeah. But, you could play any Willie Nelson song, but you're not going to be Willie Nelson.
Do you think, if when Willie's coming up, would he have been like the perfect poster child for music teachers, or would he have been like all the bad stuff, but somehow it just went well for him?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't think he'd be much of a teacher.
Yeah.
Right. He's the kind of guy who's a true artist, and it just, the more I learn about artists through people like Rick Rubin, the famous producer, the more I realize that there's some type of channel that comes through the musician, and the music comes out of them. Yeah. And they all these greats really describe, the song came to me, I recorded it, and now it's out in the world and it's not mine anymore. Yeah. I hear that a lot, and I don't know if that's just BS or if they're really like a conduit for something else that's coming through them, like an antenna.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I don't know if this is true in all arenas, but there's probably something to it. If you look at teams of any kind, or like an orchestra, like a group of musicians, the likelihood of being able to be successful at putting a team together, let's call it like a sports team, the larger number of players is actually greater probability-wise, because if you are looking for, so in tennis, you have that exceptional person. But if you go to maybe 5 players like basketball, they all have to be good. If you go to a larger set of players, if you have somebody who's fundamentally solid at American football, you're 11 players on a team, and they're all solid in their positions, you're probably going to outperform the team that's got a superstar, but the others aren't. Yeah. And, that's interesting because, like, from a musical standpoint, you probably can enjoy it, like there's the 80-20 rule, like you can probably get 80%, and you can love it, and you can have fun with your friends and stuff. If you're measuring yourself on, like, I'm going to be the next superstar, likelihood's low.
Yeah,
if it's like, I'm going to love music and enjoy it, likelihood's high.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's totally true. And, there's a lot of conversations out there, especially where in the communities that I spend my time in, around, is this band, let's just say the example right now would be like the Smashing Pumpkins, okay? So they are one of my favorite bands of all time. And are they still the Smashing Pumpkins without their original bass player, Darcy? Darcy's been gone from the band for years and years and years. And as talented as she was and as instrumental as she was in creating their first 2 albums, they've replaced her, right, with someone who's a little bit more, they've replaced her a couple times, but with somebody who's more predictable and going to be part of the band. So is that the Smashing Pumpkins anymore or not? And this is that conversation that people have, and there's countless conversations around that. Van
Halen.
Yeah, Van Halen, great example, right? Yeah, great, like David Lee Roth. And the list goes on. One of the more current conversations.
Was Sammy Hagar? Is it still Van Halen? Right?
Like
it's the purist, right? David Lee Roth, Sammy Hagar. What is it?
Yeah. So to me, when I make that. If I make that call, I'm going to say Van Halen is still Van Halen because of Eddie Van Halen, not because of Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth. And you may say the same thing about like AC/DC, Bon Scott versus who they replaced him with, so there's that. And then the more current one is a band called Pantera. In the 1990s. They
That's
were
current.
Well.
You're sounding old, dude.
Here's why they're current. I know it's like 10 years ago in the 90s.
Yeah. These young kids, the Eagles.
Yeah. But Pantera had a amazing discography, loyal fans, very unique sound, different in the metal world that no one could touch. Unfortunately, the 2 brothers who started the band have passed away. And they are touring now as Pantera with 2 replacements on drums and guitar. And so the conversation that I posed to my audience was like, is this a reunion or is this a tribute? And I'm getting a lot of like, this is a reunion. It doesn't matter if the 2 band members have passed because of these other 5 examples.
And do you think like remixes and stuff have changed that? The ability of like mixing eras of a band, or you have someone
sampling,
or like somebody, their father passed away, and now they're going to make him. Has that changed from just pure live performance valuation or not?
Good question. I think the one band or a band that comes to mind would be like the Led Zeppelin situation. Now, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant have had a lot of differences, and there was a point in time where they tried to reunite, and they would have had Jason Bonham, the son of John Bonham, on drums. So is that Led Zeppelin? Do we call that Led Zeppelin? Do we call that, do we just call it Zeppelin? What do we call it? And so like that type of stuff, people are they have very personal opinions about it, and they don't want their thing broken.
Yeah, I mean, it's like really important thing for society is in the U.S. Coca-Cola or Mexican Coca-Cola? Mexican's better. Like
It's 10 times better. Mexican Coke is so much better.
Okay, we've known each other for 2008. When did we
2008.
Okay,
yeah,
so, right.
Sunnyvale.
There's like
I remember meeting you the first day. I totally remember it. It's really
Sunnyvale.
weird. Yeah, Mountain
in
View.
an office or not?
Yeah. I came to the LinkedIn office for the first day.
Yeah.
And you're there pounding the phones, standing.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this guy? I'm like, this guy's standing, making phone calls. What the hell did I do? and then, we became friends.
They let me out of the cage.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, this guy's working really hard.
That's at some point we're going to come back to that train of thought, but like you think about the early days of anything.
Yeah.
What a ragtag group of people, right? If you were doing, we've talked about this, like if you were doing at a later stage of a company, you had all the qualifications of people we hired for later, none of us would have made it through the screening.
Not one of them.
Yeah.
And I, in fact, did not get through my first interview. I was rejected. And then I called and called and called and called every single person I could find until they hired me.
Yeah.
And it took about 3 weeks for them to come back and say, which I thought was quick, but 3 weeks. And my whole phrasing was like, you made a mistake. Let me help you fix your mistake. And eventually they bought it.
Well, what's interesting is like, because if you really look at the art of sales, like you demonstrated that, right? Like we worked through it. And I think, I also felt like to a certain point, like hypocritical, because you start getting, or you have all these filters, but there's a difference to like hiring at scale, like with the music, right? There's like, okay, you need that superstar and it's voice only, and they're going to stand on stage,
Yes.
At the Met. Well, that's a little bit different than I'm assembling, orchestras all over the world. It's different criteria.
Totally different, right?
Yeah.
In the early days, you're willing to take. I think what we saw is that they're willing to take risks on super scrappy entrepreneurial people. Now the challenge becomes, like you're describing, when you scale that, how do you maintain that culture? You actually don't. You just don't. You hire.
It's ineffective to do so.
Safer. You make safer bets.
This sounds weird to a lot of people, but I see like professional sales, which is where you and I originally met. There's the art versus science debate. Like once there was, in the early 1900s, people thought they had the science of selling figured out. Back then, there's only one way to do it.
Right.
Back in the day, with it was either MCR or IBM. There's one way to sell. Well, that's once you get beyond humans, right? And so, but in the early days, it's artists. Yeah. And you take someone who has, so like our good friend, Donnie Dinker.
Yeah,
right?
great guy.
Donnie was a good guy. Like there's the filters, and he and I talked, and it was like, he was all kinds of different stuff, nothing to do with technology. And I remember Donnie called me. So this is what I think an exceptional human. We're in the tech space. We're like at the early days with social media, and he was he was like in training, and he's like, dude, I don't know. And I like, how do you use Outlook or whatever it was?
yeah.
And yet he could turn on the art of human relationships.
Yes.
And you put a microphone in front of that guy.
Yeah.
We're like, it's like a musician. We're like, Jesus, where did this guy come from?
Yeah, it didn't. The other areas didn't matter. Right. And I think that's something I've personally struggled with, that I've been able to overcome. But that was hard for me. So starting in a small company, where the majority of it is an art, because you're evangelizing, you're selling something people don't know what it is, they don't understand it. It's a whole new experience to hear about. Yeah. And so some of the science components are really not important until later. That's where I had a challenge, was when the scientists, data scientists, sales operations come in and start to say, this is how you're going to operate, and you can live within these walls, but you're not going to exceed. You're not going to go left. You're not going to go right. You're going to stay within these guardrails, and I found that to be very stifling, and it reduced the amount of time I could be an artist, and I'm a creative person.
You know what's interesting is like there's sort of that early stage person that if you put too many constraints around, so Dick Fosbury. High jumper, Fosbury flop. So it used to be high jumping there was a bar and they had it was sand, like it wasn't like a pit. And so people like almost hurdled it, and then they learned to jump over it different ways. He's the first guy that jumped with his back to the bar.
Interesting.
Super weird. And then he was exceptional because he would call it art, but he was creative enough. He found a new way. Well, if you had to like be so scientific about it, like today when you look at high jumpers, it's a game of millimeters, and you would never get that creativity.
That's true. That's a really good point. Yeah, and I think you lose a lot in the world if you remove creativity. I mean, that's where all the best ideas come from. They don't come from, in my opinion, spreadsheets.
I think it also depends. Like, do you want to do something that you want to be like a new innovator in this thing in the world, or do you just want to enjoy it? So like one of the things I think is really interesting about what you're doing is you're, what's the right word? You're like popularizing, that's not commoditizing, you're, but
definitely not monetizing.
yeah, you definitely need to monetize more, man. That's not monetizing. No, you're what's the word when you can make something available to the whole public?
Like democratizing?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. That's just such a corporate word. I hate that word. Anyway.
But you okay? So there's some basic things, and a lot of people, So for me, like conflict resolution, you're like, I just hate conflict. I'm not good at it. I bet I could teach you 4 techniques.
Okay.
That you'd be pretty good at it. You'd remove a lot of stress from you and other people. Are you ever going to be? Am I ever going to be like the most exceptional mediator in the world? I mean, it's rare.
If you put in the 10,000 hours, possibly.
Probably, but like you standing out and be able to negotiate tense situations to de-escalate nuclear war. Like no, but can you improve your life and those around you dramatically?
Absolutely.
And one of the things I think is how do you help people be competent at something? They don't all have to be great at it, except for like your core thing. So, for example, I see what you're doing. We're talking about like in business, and for you and I, where we met in sales, it was like creative people, and then it's like the scientists went and studied the animals, and they're like, oh, they do these things, and so in that era there was that, and then we replicated it. Once you have hundreds or thousands in different languages, you got to have that, and so you have something that this will help. If you remember the first training we did, so we had a bunch of people crushing it. First training we did.
I do remember it. Half Moon Bay.
Half Moon Bay.
Yep.
The entertainment of the whole time was our friend Mike Gamson had to climb a tree to get something out of it.
yeah. I remember that actually.
But Mike also, like, I know we did sales
long
training.
time ago.
What I remember, Mike has like an exceptional ability to like pick things up quickly. Juggling. He taught the whole room in maybe 20, 30 minutes how to juggle.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't do this. But it was like the fundamentals of the cloth and the silk, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I still, in my desk drawer, I have those LinkedIn juggling balls.
I remember those.
Because none of us were great, but like 100% of the people I believe left there, like, I can juggle.
Yeah. Just enough to get you started.
Yeah. And, but 30 minutes prior, can you juggle?
No.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Here's a few basic things. Like, are we going to be like, joining the circus next week? I might, not for juggling. But it's cool. I can do that, and that's fun, and I can entertain my kids because they think I'm good. Music, probably the same way.
That's exactly, you're hitting the nail right on the head with my product, the Elmore Pedal.
Yeah.
It was designed for me. I picked up guitar late in life. I was 33, like I said, very, very old to pick up a guitar. And it was because I had so much self-doubt. I literally had told myself, and with the help of some other people in my life, you're not going to be able to do that. Like you don't have the mathematical ability. You don't have the analytical ability. You don't have the concentration. Like these are things that I believed to be true. And then my wife gives me a guitar, a Buddy Guy Strat signed to me at our wedding in front of 150 of my best friends. And she whispers in my ear, she's like, now you are screwed. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, she knows that if I hold myself accountable for something, I'll end up doing it. And so I couldn't take the guitar and not learn. So that was the beginning. Was I don't really want to go on tour. I'm not trying to play in a bar. My goal was to be competent enough to have a hobby. Just like when people go to the golf range, the driving range. Yeah. They're not trying to, some are trying to hit the ball 350 yards. Some are just trying to hit it straight. And that goal, when I think about building my product and building my company, I am trying to really think about everybody and their individual goal, right? Do they want to get on stage? Are they already on stage? Can this product help them on stage? The answer is yes. If they've never picked up guitar and they want to be able to play at a campfire for their friends, the Elmore Pedal enables you to get there. It's a vehicle to get to wherever your destination you're trying to go musically.
Well, I mean, that to me was compelling. And like, we never talked about this, but okay, you had that moment where you now have a guitar and you're kind of committed. I'd played I was like everybody other high school kid, like I learned like smoke on the water, like, so, like a couple of things. Like, that's cool. I can play the guitar. It'll be, fast forward to, I was at an office. It was actually at LinkedIn. It was some office, and I'd gone around the world, and they would like give gifts. Thanks for coming. What? And it was it might have been Omaha. I think it was somewhere in North America. And they sent me like a guitar, like a real one.
I remember.
And I'm like, this is awesome. And it's still 13 years later. It looks awesome in my office.
Brand new.
It's like, got a stand. It's got the logo on it, and it looks great, and it sits there.
Yeah.
And probably I'm like, I don't know. But you got one. You were committed to it. I looked at it. I'm like, I don't know. How did you get yourself competent? And then was that like inspiration for helping other people do it more effectively? Or like, does that correlate to Elmore Pedal?
Yeah, it's a great question. So how did I get to, the first part of the question was, how did I get to a level of competence?
Yeah.
Right? And that was through a number of instructors at first. The instructors inevitably left me frustrated because they would want to teach me what they wanted to teach me rather than what I felt would be fun. And I need to be engaged when I'm learning. Like, some people can just read a book and be totally, learn that way. I really need some excitement around it, some passion, some enthusiasm. So how did I become competent at the guitar? It was through a lot of hours of discipline and desire, and then some reward. The reward was I just made a sound on guitar that I recognize. So it's like I was determined to make the sound that I wanted to hear, which was just maybe, bend a string in tune. And that to me was like, oh, wow, I did that. And I couldn't do that 3 weeks ago. So I know that all the work I'm putting in has gotten me to this point. Now, what's difficult about that is like, so what? I bent a string in tune. I'm not anywhere near where I want to be as a guitar player. But those incremental wins are, to me, what has gotten me to continue playing for 10 years. Most people, 90% of people quit in the first 3 months of playing guitar. Yeah.
That's interesting about music is like you have instantaneous feedback, not from other people, right? It's the sound itself.
Yeah. Are you talking about you? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, you were literally like the most enjoyable person to work for. You were one of them for me. Like, it was just, that's the thing about working with you, alongside you, and then reporting to you. I felt like I could be myself. Yeah. And that's art piece that was super important to me. And I was a high performing salesperson, not the number one in the country or in the company, not last, but I performed very well on a lot of different kind of levels. Yeah. And it was because I was allowed to be myself, my authentic self.
Yeah, interesting.
Whether the company culture that are indoctrinated in you resonate with you or not, it didn't matter at that point. It's like, okay, do these things matter to you? They matter to us as a leadership core. Do they matter to you? And they should matter to you, and this is how you should operate. And I felt connected to that vision and mission pretty closely. But at the same time, I was allowed to express myself and communicate with customers and potential customers in my artistic way and in not my scientific way. Anybody who knows me, I'm not analytical at all. Yeah. Unless I'm thinking about myself. And I analyze everything.
Elmore. You told me the story behind this, and I don't remember, like, you told me about the basic thing, and I'm like,
sure.
The Elmore thing is, I don't know what I had a flight instructor. They were all like people who gave me the cookie cutter ways of doing things, and then I had this guy, whose name was Elmer. Okay. And he was like, every once in a while he'd come and help me, and he was like common sense logic, fly the plane kind of thing. And it was like enjoying the experience of being up in the air in its freedom.
Sure.
He was such a good instructor because he was trying to help you enjoy the spirit of aviation.
Oh my God. I'm like chewing my nails to the quick.
Elmore, I'm like, it was just, phonetically similar. But you told me the story about that. Like, remind me, like, how you came up with the name.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. It was, for some reason, to me, this all happened for a reason. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because I rarely read books. All right, so this something inspired me to read a book.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, you can tell by my vocabulary. But this is how it came about. So I was trying to learn how to play guitar, and I had gone to a bunch of instructors. Again, leaving me pretty frustrated after spending 45 minutes, $65, and learn nothing essentially, right? And so I turned to YouTube, and there I found tons of content that suited my needs and my, and made me feel like, okay, this is the right resource for me. The name Elmore came from a center of the bullseye moment where I am reading about one of my favorite musicians that has ever lived named Duane Allman from the Allman Brothers. He was an amazing guitar player, slide guitar player, Southern rock player. He died tragically in an accident in the early 70s, like 71. So I'm reading the biography. It's called Sky Dog. And in the book, there's a section, I think it's page 12, where they describe Dwayne's early learning process and how he learned how to play slide guitar. And so what he would do is put his foot under the record player and manipulate, or under the turntable of the record player, and he would manipulate the record back and forth so he could hear different phrases, different licks, different sections of the music that he was trying to learn.
So he was rewinding it manually?
Correct.
Oh, that's interesting.
With his foot. And I'm reading the book and I come across this excerpt and I'm saying, wait a minute, I have this exact same problem with YouTube. I'm constantly taking my hands off the instrument to control my online lessons. And taking your hands off the instrument in the beginning is literally a death wish, because you're trying to get your fingers to be in this position and then you have to take them off, and it's very difficult.
So are most people who learn instruments, they're basically doing YouTube today?
Yeah. Okay. Online learning for musicians is bigger than ever. Yeah. Fender sold more guitars during the pandemic than they'd sold in the history of their business.
I wonder how many, what's the parallel between guitars and dogs during the pandemic? But it makes sense, right? It's some new form of expression, and you need to fill some time.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of, hopefully,
interesting.
I think a lot of the guitars are still in the closet, collecting dust. I hope the dogs are not, but maybe they.
But what a healthy thing. Like a lot of people have created sort of bad habits and bad things during. But like learning, musical skills, like pretty fantastic. Yeah.
Totally. So the wrapping this piece up is around. Elmore James was a 1950s amazing slide guitar player and wrote some of the most amazing music ever, and he inspired Dwayne. And that was the record that was on the record player as he would manipulate. It was an Elmore James record. So I'm reading this book. I'm also experiencing a pretty significant and frustrating experience or situation while I'm taking online lessons. And then I'm reading this book, and all of a sudden I have this light bulb moment. How do I control my lessons the way Dwayne did? Yeah. And so I decided to name the pedal after the record, which was an Elmore James record.
That's great. I mean, the story behind it is so great, because it's music is about feeling and emotion, and it's not like version 13.7. It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Music is it's in the background of everybody's life, whether you choose or not, right? Like you walk around life and there's music. Yeah. Every memory you've got is probably accompanied by music, or you hear a song and it brings up a memory. Music for me puts me in moods, or helps me change my mood. Music to me is a very, very important thing. And if you deleted music from the world, you would have pure misery. I think you would have absolute pure misery.
It's interesting. Do you, I wonder if, I don't know if it's a feeling like there's got to be psychology behind, like, so most of the time working out, I don't feel like it. Right.
Yeah.
It's either early morning and I don't feel like it, or I'm like, got to get in the mode. And that I have, like, so for example, one of the things working out wise, it's least favorable to me that I need to do more of it is running. Because running, you can run anywhere you need to. But I'm like, I don't really like running. And pacing was really hard. Well, when I started learning beats per minute, that you can sort songs like that, and I started running, and I got to the point, I can tell you, when I'm playing, like, Kickstart My Heart, it's a 7-minute 30 pace for me. Anywhere in the world.
That's crazy. That's interesting.
Because it's basically 80s hair band is working out. And those things, I suddenly have a mindset for exercising.
Wow.
If I keep listening to the podcast I'm on and I go into the gym, I'm like those people who are talking on equipment, which, by the way, that's just fundamentally 12th commandment fail. Like, you can't do that.
Get out of there. Go talk.
I get the music, and then I'm like,
yeah, it pumps you up.
It's an energy thing. Versus if I do that before I talk to someone who's going through emotional trauma, like, I probably shouldn't be listening to, like, Nazareth. I need to do something that's, like, better mood.
Yeah. That's very. I mean, you're very attuned to like your mind-body connection. That's what that is. It's like, I know that this number of beats per minute makes me do X, Y, Z. To me, when I go to the gym rarely, but trying to do that more often, I listen to music that brings out some of the more aggressive side of me, because growing up as an angsty teen, I developed this very large appetite for angry music or like heavy music. And so when I go to the gym, if I'm not with my workout partner, it's always going to be some type of metal that is very, hard, has a good groove and pushes. And to me, and I don't listen to lyrics at all. Yeah. The lyrics to me are another instrument in many cases.
Well, I mean, all the 80s hair bands that I listen to is all the same lyrics anyway. But I mean, you got like,
girls, drugs.
Van Halen, AC/DC,
party on.
The whole, it's, but it's that kind of energy. Like, we have some good friends live in Austin, Texas. We have some good friends that exposed me to the concept of music therapy. So I know there's a lot of different ways that music therapy is like a mental health tool for people who are maybe it's more visibly an issue. And it's funny because you like historically go back and read of things like, King David when he was like a kid and he was like the king before him was like psycho and like throw spears at people. And he played music to calm him down.
Wow.
Like you can go back in history and read some of these things that music was used as a tool. What I find fascinating is when you can teach people to do that is self-therapy a little bit, right? Like when you start to feel it and comes through you.
Yeah. You know what? I think after talking to like I said, I told you before, I talked to so many of my customers. I really find a connection in my customers. It's not just like, hey, do you love the product? Can you leave me a review? It's what are you learning and why are you learning it? I really want to understand that journey and see if I can make my product better. But what I've found is a lot like golf or any other hobby, when you're practicing music or learning music, it is a great mental health tool because what happens is you take your mind off of your issues and you leave your own self for a moment. But for me, I think I've dealt with some anxiety issues in my life, and it comes from a lack of confidence. And I know that. And so when I get better at guitar, these are little wins for me that help to build up my confidence and reduce my anxiety. And to me, it's like some of the best feeling in the world where I'm like, this morning I couldn't play this. This afternoon I can. I did that. It's not an accident. It's not lightning in a bottle. I had a little bit of that, what do you call it? Imposter syndrome. When you and I worked together in the big corporate world, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. So I'm like, I didn't go to Stanford. I didn't work at McKinsey. I'm not a Bain consultant. I don't have the GPA that those guys did. Right. In my new hire class, it was me and DJ Patil, who became the chief data scientist for the White House. Yeah. Just the two of us. I'm like,
you guys are exactly the same, really.
I'm a D student. This guy's a genius. He coined the phrase data scientist. And so I had imposter syndrome from the day I started, And so to me, what helped me build confidence as a salesperson was just booking an appointment. Yeah. Landing an appointment. And in the first few months of my work at LinkedIn, I led the stack rankings on booked appointments, and that helped me feel like, oh, I do belong here.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is someone who has that natural talent, they're exceptional, that's good, but it can go beyond. Using DJ Patel as an example, like data science became like such an important thing. There were a few brilliant people who coined phrases and helped it be digestible to a broader set of people. Yeah. And arguably, you did that in the sales organization. Like when you're like field sales leader, and didn't have to follow a pattern. And then we started, an inside sales team, and they would go to you, like, well, how do we do the things? And you learn how to scale. It like goes beyond you. And I think that like I watch you, like what lights you up is like being good at something, being competent at it, and then also helping another person get to a level of competency.
Yeah, I do love that. Yeah. I do. It feels great. It's a great way to connect with somebody. It's a great way to make yourself feel like you're contributing, even if you're not selling something. And I didn't win every award at LinkedIn, but the award that I loved the most, literally loved the most, was called Leading from the Middle of the Pack. Yeah. Right. And it's not because I was the top performer, but because I was a leader, regardless of what my sales numbers were. And for an organization to recognize that also solidified, I'm like, I'm in the right place with the right people at the right time.
Well, so one of the things I think is beautiful about that is people who are in that era of the company, and you like personified this, they when they could help someone else do something, they were never threatened by that person becoming better than them. Like that's like culture, if you want to call it, is like, I can help this person do it, and they can do it better than me. Or I remember you and guys like Craig Butis and all of that. Like I joined and I'm a rep, and they're like, hey, I'm never going to work this, and like voluntarily handing me prospects. Yeah, no one does that.
Yeah, it was a very unselfish place. Yeah. We all, I think, we're able to rise above our individual selves because we realized this is a really amazing opportunity for us to get better, for us to improve our lives, to help improve the lives of our customers. I mean, like, those things mattered to us, which is really weird. Most companies I've worked for, nobody really cares about the customer. Like, it's just, it's all talk.
The hierarchy of the structure, right? Like your position and role and title and all that nonsense. Like, the reason that America, like, rebelled against structure of, like, we're below you always, monarchy, like that freedom, that's something that is really interesting. We talk about, like, being able to really be yourself and be able to go out of it. We're going to get into that in a minute. I think it's something too that when you start to realize the phrase, like, this is kind of soul crushing work because it literally is about, we're creating a system, and suddenly, instead of being somebody who's like, in the early days of people being able to do, like, automation, automobiles and mechanical stuff, you were, like, really creative because you could figure out how to do something. But then it was doing it at scale, and it became factory workers. And you turn that one screw all day long. Yeah,
that became a dead end for me. Psychologically. And that's where I also have, I don't know if it's regret. I don't think regret is the right word, but it's, I wish I had, I deal with this and I struggle with this all the time. And I think a lot of people probably do. They just maybe don't talk about it or do anything about it. But it's this, I know I can fit in with this machine, and I can, plug this in and turn this and do that. And I can do those. I can follow the rules.
Right.
But that to me is very, very boring and stifling. And so as your mind begins to wander of, like, what if the grass is greener over there and I can go capture that again and I can go be myself in this place? A lot of people just won't take that step, and they'll just conform, which is, I don't think conforming is bad.
Right.
I just don't think it's for everybody. And where I talk to all of my friends that are still working in corporate America, and they live good lives, they make good money, they're secure, they feel safe. But I don't know what it is about me, but I can't be satisfied with I need safety, but I don't like the feeling of being safe. I don't know. It's a weird thing. It's like I'm collecting dust. I don't know what it is.
But do you think that there's times when how you spend your time, like, maybe it depends on your needs at the moment. So, for example, I'm sure you and I both have friends who, like, high school, like, they were kind of a mess, and what they really needed was they joined the military and they got micromanagement of how to make everything of their day. And you're like, okay, that you see that, like, it improved their life. But then you have, like, I have a brother that works for, like, a defense contractor, basically. And those people who are in their military their whole life, and then you go in there in cube land, it's like straight this way, straight that way, a perfect diagonal like this. And I walk into that, as a guy who grew up in, like, agriculture, I'm like, looks like a dairy. You go into the cube, you get milked, and then you go leave. Soul crushing thing. Now, but to some people, that's predictable, it's safe, it's what they want to do. Do you think there are times where what you really want from your work is just predictable conditioning, and then there are times where, like, you need expression, you need to be able to, you need the challenge of not knowing how to do it. Like, do you think it's about the person, or do you think it's maybe the situation in their life? Or
I think it comes down to the combination of the person and the situation in their life. And I think safety is defined differently by everybody, right? And so, like, I don't feel safe when I'm a cog in the wheel.
Yeah, interesting.
I don't feel safe at all. I feel safe when there's something I'm doing that no one else is doing. That's when I feel safe, because that, to me, is valuable. When everybody's doing the same thing, I'm just like, okay, let me be a cog in the wheel, or bring in the next person, like, because that's just not me. So I think it's a combination of how confident you are in your ability to go solve problems anywhere. And your ability to be personable enough to express that story. That's hard to say, like, I left this company after a decade of work to go do something completely unknown to myself and challenge myself. So, like, it's a struggle, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with, I'm bored. I don't like what I'm doing. My paychecks are great, but I'm not happy. My soul is crushed, and the only outlet I have is these manufactured company events where I get to act myself, and that's usually the moment where somebody, like, drinks too much at a party or something.
And it's really interesting too that I was with an organization one time that spends time helping athletes, college and professional athletes, transition into the corporate world. And one of the biggest things that I saw is when they talk about teamwork and like fundamentals and discipline, they physically did that and they saw it. And most of them talk about manufactured environments in the corporate world, because, like, this is a team, this is a family, and they're like, oh, no, it's not.
No.
And and not to downplay that, but it's like it's very interesting the way you're talking about it, because it's some people thrive in that, just keep things predictable, or maybe they don't thrive, but that's what they want.
Yeah.
And
or that's what they settle for.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? I think most people settle. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, I don't knock people for settling because there's reasons for it. But I can promise you, every person I know that has settled and continues to settle is not happy. They are not happy. They're happy that they can provide insurance for their family, they can send their kids to college, they can do these things, and they only see this one way of doing it.
That is like, that's probably where you and I connect so much, because it's, I'm going to get the quote not perfect, but like, far greater it is to dare great and mighty things, to win glorious triumph, even though checkered by defeat, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much because they don't win victory or defeat. Something like that.
I love that.
Give me the chance to fail. Give me the freedom to fail. And some of that, too, might be knowing that you go through something, you put your heart into it, you fail, and you realize it was okay.
Yeah.
You came through it. And the most catastrophic thing, our society is interesting, because we talk about academia. Neither one of us were like the poster children for academia, because failing is bad, and so you want to do the safe thing and get all the good grades. Yeah. It doesn't reward taking a shot.
Not at all. Not at all. In fact, I teach my daughter, who's 8 years old, anytime she makes a mistake, I praise her.
Yeah.
And I say, we love mistakes in this house. Yeah. Because it's the best way to learn, and you should never fear taking a risk. Yeah. You should be calculated with your risk. You should be intelligent about that.
Yeah.
But what's the worst that can happen? You learn something. Really, that's the worst that can happen. Yeah. Maybe you lose some money. Maybe you lose a few connections or a few friends here and there that don't get it. And they'll come back, or you'll come back to them. It's a moment in time. We don't live very long. We just don't. Yeah. And my wife, who's the most supportive person in my life, has enabled me to build my business. Without her, I would definitely not be doing what I'm doing. Yeah. I can promise you that. I would be anxiously sitting in a cube somewhere, biting my nails to the quick, wondering if I'm going to be put on a PIP, on a performance improvement plan, which, and to me, I really appreciate having that support. And I think there's a lot of friends of mine and colleagues and who don't have that support, right? Where there's fear on, both parties have fear, but my wife happens to believe in me so deeply, more than I believe in my own self, that I'm able to do this.
So that to me, that's a beautiful thing. there's I'm very open-minded about people believing what they want to believe, but you said something I think is really core to human nature, and there's this the for and against the institution of marriage and what do we want to call it, nuclear family unit. But if you think about you as one, the two become one, things change, right? Same thing for me. Like I am like completely incomplete without Andrea, without my wife.
Yeah.
But we think about us collectively.
Yes.
The stability, it's kind of like with parents. Like, I'm just not very good at, a high percentage of things. And so I focus on a few things. And there's, luckily, the things that I happen to be good at, she doesn't want to do. It's like, do that. And it's not like roles, because people are like, well, there's this role.
It's
like
symbiotic.
It's a unit.
Yeah.
Right. And I think what's beautiful about it is the balance of things that are like up and down.
Yeah. That takes time, though.
Hold on 1 second. You don't want that bug in the view.
Oh, Lord.
I can't even see it because it's...
Okay, it's coming up.
It had a lot of juice in it.
So what I've spent a reasonable amount of time giving people like career advice.
Yeah.
I have never advertised myself as that, but somehow phone rings a lot. But it is, a couple of things that you said really resonate. One is a lot of times people feel that there's safety in kind of blending in and being part of this group. But like when you go through tough economic times, for example, with a company, and somebody they're going to downsize the company, which basically means fire people. I don't know how we got to this, make it sound better.
Workforce reduction?
Yeah,
that's a cool one.
We're going to have a normalization of the company at this time. Align our resources.
A load balancing?
Yeah. We're going to align our resources more strategically with initiatives we have.
Because you weren't doing that before, were you?
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, there are... I'm going to filter my comments on that. But so when you're going to reduce, when you make a strategic, nobody wants to talk about this, but one of the most important things that leaders do is they keep bloat from happening in headcount of the company, because you will need to change that. And if you're like, it's good times, it's just like, people who get their expenses so high, they have no freedom. And you and I have talked about this as an entrepreneur, man. Like, keep your expenses, because otherwise, if your outgo exceeds your income, your upkeep is your downfall, right?
There you go.
And companies do this too. They're not disciplined, and they want to make it all sound fun and good, and they're hiring quickly because they get this ego burst out of like, that is irresponsible.
Yeah, we raised this huge round. Let's bring everybody in, and then if it works, great. If not, we'll get rid of them. And it's just like you're changing people's lives in that situation.
And I think that the corporate world, the systemized world, what that does, if you're going to hire at scale, what are you going to do? You're going to systemize. You're going to create a bunch of consistency, which also means you can minimize. We can do a 20% headcount reduction. That's literally, I've had hundreds of these conversations.
Yeah,
it's about, on a spreadsheet, we can mathematically make this work. And the people who are emotionally attached, they're, but I'm in this place and I'm safe. How would you like to be on, like, one of the most high sought after roles in our lifetime, like brilliant software engineers, right? You take Twitter, X, Elon came in and, very divisively to people, 85% of the company headcount reduction. Every person there was like you and I in every company, like, I'm pretty special. I mean, like, they wouldn't.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I've been there 12 years. I built this. I did that, and they're gone.
Well, it's interesting because my father's generation was like, go to the best school you can.
Yep.
Get a good education. Get a good job.
Yep.
Go work for a company, the best company you can, the biggest company you can. Work for them until you retire, get your gold watch, and you're good. And they will take care of you. You'll take care of them. Well, that was back, like pensions and all that stuff. Well, by the time I got that was gone. But that was the thing. That's what you did. That was safety.
Yeah.
Today, if it's like, safety is going to be, get the same degree as everybody else, do the same thing as everybody else, work for the biggest company possible. Bad idea, right? I mean, not a bad idea. That's not safety.
It's not safe at all. Yeah. And the reason I got into corporate America, and I call it corporate America, but the reason I got into like a sales job was because of the fear of not having health insurance and not being able to like have a regular paycheck. But I was doing something really interesting before that. I was working in radio. I was starting to become valuable to the radio station because I innovated there, and I started bringing guests into different situations that they had never been in, professional athletes, going to the games, going to the practices, putting the phone in front of them, getting them live in these places that really hadn't happened before. So I created a new position for the business and for myself, right? And that was like maybe very unsafe, but it turned out to be a 4.5 year career. Yeah. And I left for safety, right? I left for safety, which I don't regret, because had I not spent 20 years working in various companies, perfecting my sales skill and working on my business acumen, I would not be as successful today as I am had I not had that experience. So I don't regret going into corporate America, but like my biggest fear was putting on a suit. I was like, I'm not wearing a suit. Like I cannot even envision this. And I did it, so I wouldn't say like I regret my career at all. I actually love my career and think fondly of it, my former life, right? But, there has to come a time where you say, either I'm an entrepreneur or I'm not. Yeah. And if you're not, that's totally cool. Like, do your thing. But if you have that entrepreneurial itch, you have to get started. You just have to get started. And if you don't get started, then you're just not an entrepreneur, and that's no big deal. It's just not for everybody. Yeah,
I find it interesting, people who at large scale can create an environment, they're honest, so the concept of like a tour of duty or whatever, it's like, what experience, what do you want to get out of this experience in the next 2, 3, 4 years? Then I think you can treat your career as an entrepreneur using this particular solopreneur, environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that tour of duty framework is really, really interesting.
It's, Reid Hoffman's book, The Startup of You. The essence of you, not pretending that the corporate world is going to take care of you. That's not the thing. And it's not that they're bad, you're good. And it's sort of like, go back to manufacturing, it was like management versus labor. How divisive. Like real organizations, John Naisbitt wrote a book called Megatrends in the 80s. Okay. But one of the things you talk about is people are going to come together for a nanosecond. And that experience is for a certain thing. And like you said, you get skills from it. But at scale, like, no one wants to hear this, but do you know how much any particular role, one of my early mentors said, here's why I think you, Wade, are not going to find joy long-term in structured environment. I go, yeah. He goes, you know how you determine the appropriate compensation for a role in a specific region? Just enough to steal their dream.
That is that quote, The base salary is the drug they give you to forget your dreams.
I mean, hey, how many people have been right on the precipice, right on the edge that you were like, I'm going to jump, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the company comes back and they give
Sweeten
that
the
hook,
pot.
and you get this language. And like, no disrespect, there are people who are, the great thing about side hustles now starting to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love the fact, like, there's a lot of people who, they're great at their corporate job, and they've got this real estate business, or it's a direct sales business, or it's whatever it is, and it's their passion.
Yeah.
They're creating, I had one of the most amazing executive assistants, Tammy Warren.
Oh, yeah,
and
Tammy's
she was
great.
like incredible at her job, and then also, by the way, super creative. She like creates wreaths and this custom artwork.
Great singer too.
Like she like cuts an album. All these skills,
Yeah,
like
so talented.
Did those things make her worse at her job? No, they empowered her. Like the old school of like, you work for me and I own your soul. Like that's not right. And people. So I think it's like they don't have to be crazy like you and me and say we're going to go take the risk.
Yeah.
We don't live in a world today where you don't have to necessarily make that choice. Eventually you do.
Yeah.
But you don't. It's not like, oh, I need to leave all of this and I have to go step out here and hope it works.
No, that's super scary. That's really scary.
Yeah.
But the first step is, like you've described, is start something on a small basis and sample and make your mistakes that don't affect your day job.
It's interesting too, because what correlates here, like the industry of Elmore Pedal, like music. One of the things that really probably, if somebody's working all day and they're like, "What? I don't want you taking your time and energy and resources to go play music." Well, how stupid does that sound? But some people, but it's like that might be they're out there, they're like cosmetologists, or like they're doing something.
Yeah.
It doesn't take time, energy, and resources. It makes them just like learning to play an instrument. It makes them like maybe a
more well-rounded, happier person,
more satisfied,
more
person.
fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know many people that work around the clock that are super fulfilled. I really don't, unless they're working on their own business.
Yeah.
It's that again. It's that, but I think it's really interesting where we came from, where there's this concept of tour of duty, where I'm going to give you, the employer, my skills, my time in exchange for whatever it is I get back. And I think you and I were a little bit in this bubble where that like felt like reality in the world, but it wasn't.
Oh man, how many people do you know went from that environment to the next company?
Oh man, and they
it's
came
like
running back.
Almost 100% of the time. Like they just like jump on that little pad, like, whoa, it's dangerous out there.
I did it. I left LinkedIn for 9 months, 10 months for a startup, in this food distribution space, menu analytics type of thing that I had a warm intro to, a good friend that I trust, still do introduce me to the company, great opportunity. I still have friends there. But yeah, I came running back. I'm like, this is, no.
I learned later that there were some people who essentially had pools on people. They walk out the door, tick, 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 you'll be back.
Yeah.
But because that environment.
That's where, did boomerang employee, you ever hear that term before, 2015? I never heard. And I don't know if boomerang is the right, I've always wanted to boomerang is not really the same thing. Boomerang assumes that you come back the same.
Interesting.
You're not you're more of a satellite. You go out, you orbit, you come back with more information.
Yeah,
so I think like a satellite employee, but then it sounds like the hybrid workforce thing. So time for you to coin something. I think you will. Satellite's not the right word, but boomerang is definitely not.
On the battlefield, you have that tent where the wounded people, not the ones that are going to die, like, can you get them patched back up to go back out to battle? It's that, because everyone who leaves an environment, they love, and they say, like, oh, this is hard, and they come back.
Yeah.
They're wounded.
Yeah.
And you got to come back, and they never come back to the same shape. But the other thing, like taking risk, whether it's that kind of risk or in the corporate, I had, my grandfather used to say, never trust a man without a limp.
Yeah.
Because have you been through the experiences?
Yeah.
It's pretty
That's
awesome.
really a genius.
But as a human too, do you embrace somebody who's imperfect because tried this and they're
you're looking for the problem.
Yeah. And
be yourself and limp.
It's amazing too, and I think we could probably apply this to our personal lives. But when one of the things that when you get in these environments, are kind of this, they crush your soul or spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Part of reason that happens is we put ourselves, we expect something from it that we're not going to get. And that we're someone's trying to control you. But that's true in our personal lives as well. Like, how many personal relationships are at risk because one person's trying to control another person, or they're insecure and it's like they want to win, and then what I told you, so whatever those things are.
Yeah, that imbalance.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what if you embrace your differences? What if you're like, we talked about like both of us without our wives are pretty incomplete, right?
Totally.
And like, are you and Kate different?
Very different.
Yeah, and so is that bad?
No, I mean, in some situations it's horrible. But
No, but I mean, but no, it's what makes you as a family. Man, imagine if you were exactly the same. That'd be terrible.
Yeah, I mean, and it's weird because when you find your mate, you're like, oh, we have so much in common. But those things, you don't really remember those after a while, like what's in common. Those become table stakes. What's interesting are the differences, as you're describing, and those cause issues, or they cause laughter, humility, whatever it might be. But yeah, those are the things that are, it's the yin to your yang type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to pick things apart that you don't agree with. So when we got married, the difference between myself and Andrea, it really comes down to window treatment.
Okay,
Like,
tell me more.
To me, I want to cover no sun's getting in, we're good.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's not the whole experience of window treatment.
Okay.
The difference between curtains and window treatment, about $2,000 a window. But so I kind of like in a sort of sarcastic way, anything that was decorative, it wasn't functional, was a doily.
Yeah, yeah.
Because my grandmother had doilies.
Yeah, it's the engineer in you. If it doesn't serve a purpose, it's excess or unnecessary stress.
And I would like sort of make fun of it. But then what I noticed is like the experience when we had guests at our home or whatever.
Yeah.
What I was, I don't know about criticizing because I actually enjoyed it, but just sarcasm.
Yeah.
Which is really
it's fun.
Hidden jabbing at people, which is
fun.
Probably not good.
It's still fun.
But I'm like, oh, there's actually value to that goes beyond the function. Like otherwise it's like we need new chairs. Like, well, we have chairs.
Yeah, but you don't recognize the thing that other people value, which your wife happens to bring to the table, that those things that, those other people value that you might not recognize. And
exactly. And so when that other person can recognize something in you, like using that as an example, when you learn to embrace it. So I don't know if you had this, but when we first got married, my wife did a lot of the, you're going to wear that? At first I'm like, I'm covered. But originally I'm like, can you make sure the thing you're good at that I don't mess up, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's it happens with when my wife and I first got married, I wear a lot of dark clothes for a number of reasons, but primarily because I'm colorblind, so I don't have to make any tough decisions. Or wrong decisions about what I'm wearing. But when we first got a dog, right? So that was like, I've had a dog. I had a family dog. My wife never had a family dog, so she relied on me a lot for like the discipline and the routine and the habits that are necessary. But
for you to be housebroken or the dog?
For the two of us, but what my wife brought to the table were like, she never had any of these experiences before, and so it made me rethink. Wait, why did I do that with my childhood dog? That makes no sense, And so she helped me kind of raise a really healthy, awesome dog that has been our love aside from our daughter.
Because you had a different perspective.
Yeah, totally.
So here, let me use the different perspective in something. I'm interested in your thoughts on it because there's two ways of looking at. One of the things that happened, like in my lifetime in the corporate world, is they noticed a lot of unconscious bias and basically too many like middle-aged white men controlling everything. And so the solution is to create a bunch of rules. Yep. And so you must tick all the following boxes. And then, on the other hand, you think about those early days, like when you and I first met, and we had like 5 people in an office, and we're all very similar. And it's basically like a bunch of guys in a dorm room. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And as we started getting different age group, different genders, different ethnicities, different languages spoken, introvert, extrovert.
Yep.
Like, think of how much better the environment was. Not because somebody told us to. We just realized, man, this we can comprehensively understand the world better.
Yeah.
Because of that.
That was organic.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was no quota on anything other than performance.
Yeah.
You're right.
And it's interesting because it's like what you articulated about being an artist or a musician or the art of selling, that kind of thing. It's scale doesn't mean you have to squelch that, right? Where that idea of diversity, like diverse teams win, and you feel better about it and you love it. But if someone's forcing you down a path, it's like, is it a good idea to have structure in your life? Sure. Yeah. Is it a good idea if someone tells you and micromanages your life the whole time? Look at kids who don't have any freedom to fail and they have the structure. What happens the minute they get out from home? They go off the rails.
Totally.
Right?
I can point to a good number of my friends that had that. They were straight A students, went to whatever university, Big Ten school, got straight A's there, and then enter the real world, and they are not comfortable. Being very polite.
What happens if you're never exposed to any disease? Like your immune system's not built up.
Yeah, you're gonna die.
Right? The amount of like secondary infections, diseases, and all that stuff that happened during COVID when people were isolated and they didn't get out and they didn't expose to the same thing. They had these post-secondary illnesses
crazy,
and stuff. And I didn't know the data behind it. And I'm like, well, oh yeah, it makes sense because your kid's not licking the rails going down to the train station,
Right.
But that immune. So it's interesting that like where. It's not necessarily like, for example, the scale of an organization, not necessarily the industry. It's like, accountants are boring. Man, I know some accountants that are awesome. Yeah. I also know some.
Let me know when you introduce me. My dad's an accountant. He's a good guy, but not super interesting.
Yeah. I'm filtering that because my dad was in banking.
Your face
he was banking.
like, oh, shit.
So here's an example. So banking to me, because it was like small town Midwest. They were loaning money to like farmers, ranchers, small businesses. Okay. Right. And banks loan money based on risk. So if you don't have the guaranteed ability to pay the loan back, they wouldn't loan you money. And I'm like, so you only loan money to people who don't need it.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, where's the help?
Fast forward to like in the tech world, like venture capital, it's like a guy with an idea. Here's $75 million to start with. What? And my dad's bank, they wouldn't loan you $5,000 for a used car if you didn't have collateral. Those two things are like very different. But look at what happened in the world when capital was willing to take risks. Now, did they fail a lot? Yeah. But they bet on people. And like a lot of those, their initial idea didn't work. But the fifth idea did.
Yes.
And the freedom to fail in that. And they didn't feel like violated because you blew off my money. That's not how great empowerment works, right?
Yeah, that's it's interesting how different investors can be with that. Some will say they invest in the idea, or they'll say they invest in the entrepreneur, or they invest in the industry, right? And they or a number of those factors. And I've always enjoyed working with people who invest in me. Yeah. Because I know I have a great product. I know I have a great idea, but I also know I'm going to create more of this value, right? And so it's where I struggle commonly is look, if I need to raise more money for my business to do XYZ, I don't have the numbers that people want to see that go into the spreadsheet that spit out, okay, I can give you this amount of money and I'll get this amount of return. There's not a lot of room for entrepreneurs like me, so I have to do it the hard way, which, I think raising money is hard, but growing a business organically through grassroots and your own sweat equity is extremely difficult to do.
Yeah, it's, there's, in the risk mitigation world, it's like the Mark Twain School of Investing. Okay. I'm more interested in the return of my money than the return on my money.
Okay.
It's safe, it's predictable.
Yeah.
And, and there's some of that. And what's interesting is like this life portfolio too, that risk doesn't mean you have to risk it all. Like if this doesn't happen and you die and so does everyone around you, like it's not that level of risk, right? It's especially
that's very different.
In a free market economy with the kind of things we have in our society, business failure, if you will, meaning what does that mean? Like getting to a certain point doesn't mean you are a failure.
That's a hard pill to swallow, honestly, because I personally, and I know I'm very attached to what I'm doing. It is part of my story of my life, not just my business. Like it is my DNA that I was able to solve a problem for potentially one day millions of people, definitely solve it for myself and thousands of people right now. That feeling is incredible, but it is very hard to continue when you think that you have not succeeded, right? So like you're not succeeding, you are succeeding, you're not succeeding, you are succeeding. There's a cool thing that happened. Oh, Jack White and Third Man Records, they bought my they agreed to do a collaboration with me. Then Billy Corgan and of the Smashing Pumpkins and him. And like these are like silver bullet or magic bullet things that happen, and you're like, success.
Yeah.
But the very next day it's over.
Yeah.
You're just like, shit, I have to climb again. And so I refer to my journey as Mount Elmore. And I know what the summit looks like.
Yeah.
I do know what it looks like. I envision it and I think about it on a daily basis. But the whatever the lower points, like the where the gates where you check in on the way, the base camp. Thank you. The base camps where you get to, those are the shiny penny moments. Those are the Jack White, purchases a number of your pedals and does a collaboration, or Billy Corgan, or you work with an incredible brand like a True Fire. Those are summits or base camps. And the summit to me is hard to climb to.
Yep.
But when I get there, then I know I'll be successful. Now, does it mean it's a $10 million exit for my investors? I hope so. Does it mean that I've built a product?
I support the remark.
My Mount Elmore is when I am dead, there's a musician there that says, I would not be a professional musician today if it wasn't for what James did with his life. That's my Mount Elmore.
I think something that's really important is that what that summit allows you to do is to see the next peak. There's a guy named Robert Schuller that wrote a book called Peak to Peak.
That's interesting.
And the principle was, otherwise, as you start to get near it, you're about to summit. The best part of life is about to come to an end. You're going to slow down.
Oh, wow.
Because you're going to savor these moments. Because I used to be down there, I kind of like this.
Wow.
But if you know the goal of that summit is to see more, to see further, to do more, you also become, some people are like, I did it. I had a mentor when I was like 19, 20 years old, and he was in a business where they got recognized at different levels. And he said he saw people, the parabolic curve, they're like this, and they start to taper off because they're about to hit that success level. And he said, where if it's just, he said to me, he's like, one thing you might want to think about is success. Think about it as the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream. Like, can you get to the summit so you can see bigger, so you can see further, so you can do more?
That's amazing.
Not for gain, for perspective.
Yeah, for perspective. And that just literally like created a light bulb moment for me. So I'm glad you shared that, because I know when I get to the summit, whether it's when I'm underground or, someone acquires the company and I get to continue building it more at scale, I'll know more, I'll see more opportunity. And that's happened before. And I never really thought about it that way.
Well, it's interesting because I spent a reasonable amount of time at early stage companies, and it's called angel investor. I'm not sure which part of the spiritual realm that is, angel devil, because it's not. The problem at that stage is like the unintentional golden rule, the one with the gold rules. Not always great, but watching behavior patterns is sometimes, if success is defined as a destination, you look at people and you're like, and they handled adversity well, they didn't handle success well. I did that. Where there's this thing when I got that was the thing. Because then you feel like, first of all, there's an arrogance, there's an irresponsibility a little bit, because you got to really watch yourself when you're going up to the summit.
Yeah, the higher you fly, more
Once
people shoot at you.
You're good, right?
Yeah.
And that's really dangerous.
Interesting.
And I think, like a lot of times, I just came back from my niece's wedding in Seattle. It was like beautiful. But every time I'm at a wedding, I use this analogy in my own head. People sometimes see wedding as the finish line. It's like the pinnacle. I'm like, damn. No, it's the starting point.
Damn, I feel bad for those people.
Much. I look at this and that, like, no disrespect, but like some people put so much time, energy, money, resources into the wedding. Yeah. But they don't put it into the marriage.
That's not the finish line.
No, it's the starting line. And if it's sort of like if high school is a pinnacle of your career, you got it wrong. like, oh man, it's just downhill from there. I'll sit around with people who
that's not good,
especially athletes, men. They're like the further they get away from high school, the better they were. And they're talking about their glory days. You're talking about your glory days in high school, like life's not good.
Dude, I mean, yeah, if you're talking about your glory days in high school, or your glory days really in your adolescence of any kind, you definitely are. You're definitely not living currently. You're not living in the moment. You're not challenging yourself. And like, I don't know. I loved high school. I had a great time. I made a million friends. I played hockey. I had tons of fun. I went to a million live concerts. It's a great moment in my life, 4 years. And then, you could not pay me to go back though. I do not want to relive that. It is what it was. I wish I would have maybe studied a bit more, but who cares really at the end of the day? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. What do you call the person that graduates last in their med class?
A graduate.
Doctor.
Yeah. One of my great friends I was telling you about this morning, he's an amazing doctor in Maine. And one of his mentors, Dr. Weil, said, "Why are you burning yourself out in college?" He's like, "Man, I need to get straight A's." Dr. Weil's like, "Why do you need straight A's?" And it just made it created this moment for my friend where he's like, I immediately had a better life. Right then and there, I started getting C's. And I still studied and mastered my craft and became a good doctor, but the experiential portion of, being the doctor was more important than like the grades.
Yeah.
And so one of his greatest mentors in life, who's written dozens and dozens of books on, homeopathic remedies and all these things, was like, dude, you don't have to get A's. You're already in college. And it totally freed him up, and he came out of a mental spiral.
And then I just have one final thing. This is near the end of it. Okay, before we finish up, we've known each other for 13, 14 years, something like that.
Yeah.
There's one thing about you that I haven't asked, and it's one of those things that most people don't say in public because it's really polarizing.
Okay.
We live in a society where you're either in one camp or the other, and we're about to decide if we're friends anymore or not.
All right, let's see.
Who did Turn the Page best?
Who
Turn the Page?
turned the page the best? Bob Seger.
No, it's Metallica.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, sorry, man.
Bob Seger turned the page best.
I don't know. So embrace your differences. Enjoy people who don't think accurately, and I'm doing that right now. I'm being compassionate. Bob Seger got it started, and Metallica perfected it.
Okay, so I'll pass the buck back to you. Who hurt the most? Was it? I'll prompt you. 9 Inch Nails or Johnny Cash? Was it Trent Reznor or Johnny Cash?
Yeah, I'm noticing a trend here. You're a classic. You're going to go with the innovator. I'm going with the who made it more thrashing. See,
Okay, so you're
But I'm not going to go 9 Inch Nails on this one.
okay. Tell me why. I'll tell you why I agree with you that it is Johnny Cash.
And here's so for me, it's actually not that. This is Johnny Cash had a lot of inner demons. He had a lot of turmoil.
Absolutely.
And in a lot of ways, that was catastrophic for his life. However, because he translated those into music, he took his struggle and made something beautiful. Now, unfortunately, it didn't play well for him. But for his impact on people, I have a lot of respect for that. That most people take their internal demons and try and hide them from the world. He exposed them in a way that I respect a lot. So that's pretty deep, but that's why I'm going.
No, I think it's a great way to respond, and I do agree that Johnny Cash hurt more. I love Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails, and that song is just absolutely perfect in its original form. The reason why I think Johnny Cash would take the cake here is because he was in a period of his career where nobody cared about what he had to do, what he was doing, what he had to say, what songs he was writing, his performances. Nobody cared. And then immediately he covers Hurt in such a profound, compelling way that people think he wrote it.
So here's why I made the answers I did and why you are more artistically expressive than I am. Because the reason I said Johnny Cash is if you can't build upon pain. The original pain is the most unique. Turn the Page is about it's the next chapter, the next chapter, the next chapter. So the one that's the most recent is the one that has the biggest book. It's the most comprehensive book. It's logic. So you're taking the heart of it. I'm taking it like literally. I'm the spreadsheet. You're the canvas.
You're measuring it.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah. Well, look, we can still be friends. I'm not going to block you.
Great.
But hey, man, I appreciate the conversation. We could go on all day. We almost have. And it's going to be, I look forward to the next time. Thanks.
No, tons of fun. Tons of fun.
How do people find you? Find Elmore?
Yeah, you can go to elmorepedals.com. We're found on every social media site and as well as YouTube. But elmorepedals.com is where you'll be able to learn about the pedal. There's some demo videos and then ultimately purchase that pedal.
It's awesome. Love it, man.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here.